Chapter 15. Eye for an Eye. Saturday, November 14th, 1981. Velia's excitement was knocked down a couple notches by the sight of Beaverton as they exited the interstate and navigated through the suburban streets. She was hoping Agent Rylos's final challenge involved a far-off destination, even if it was still on Earth. "Why are we back here?" she asked. "This is where your test will take place." Velia recognized the neighborhood she'd been trick-or-treating in 2 weeks earlier. Roger's house was dead ahead at the end of a wide street. The van pulled into a field ringed by short ponderosa pine trees. "This is your last chance to opt out," Agent Rylos cautioned as he killed the van's engine. "I can wipe your mind and dump you here in this empty lot. You've been missing for less than 24 hours, so the whole thing will get chalked up to amnesia. You can go back to your family and normal life." Velia wasn't interested in the idea of returning to her small and universally insignificant existence. "What's the test?" Agent Rylos grinned, retrieving a small wafer-shaped tablet from his pocket and handing it to Velia. "Stealth is the only tactic that's superior to surprise. It's impossible for an enemy to retaliate when they don't know they're in a fight to begin with." "Okay. I need to see that you're capable of stealth. For this test, I want you to break into the savage's home." "Rogers?" Velia's heart skipped a beat. "Yes. Once you're inside, go to the second story." "Roger's bedroom is the last door on the left at the end of the hallway," Agent Rylos said, looking at his ring just like Kevin glanced at his wristwatch. "Roger is still sleeping. Next to his bed is a glass of water. He never changes it until it's gone. Drop the tablet into that cup without being detected. Then come back. I'll be waiting." Velia spun the wafer between her fingers. "What is it?" "A chemical compound that will make the next 48 hours of his life hell and the toilet his only companion." Velia couldn't have grinned wider if she'd tried. "You're working against the clock," Agent Rylos advised. "How long do I have?" Velia asked, her heart still fluttering. "Less time than you had a second ago. Good luck." Velia put the wafer in her pocket and exited the van, pausing to orient herself before sprinting eastward across the field. The frozen ground crunched under her weight, and the steam of each exhale lingered in the air. The neighborhood was quiet, a consequence of the early morning hour. She paused to scan for passerby and their prying eyes. This felt like playing a game of hide-and-seek. She emerged onto the sidewalk and headed toward the savage's house, staring at her feet while she moved. A natural, leisurely pace in broad daylight was less likely to draw attention than quick movements from bush to bush or tree to tree. The stratagem worked, and despite passing one man out walking his large mastiff, Velia arrived at Roger's empty driveway unmolested. She moved around the side of the house and peered through the first-floor windows. No one appeared to be inside the domicile. She kept at the intelligence gathering, circling the property twice before she was confident the coast was clear. She began testing the windows. All were locked, but the glass door on the back porch slid open, and she entered the kitchen. Velia held perfectly still to listen, but the house was silent. A cutting board and butcher knife sat on the counter next to a pile of vibrantly colored out-of-season vegetables. She considered taking the weapon, but abandoned the idea when she remembered the mission was meant to test her stealth abilities. She didn't want to cut her way out of this situation. If she got caught, she'd play up the amnesia angle Agent Rylos mentioned. She crept down a dim hallway to the great room at the front of the house. There were still no discernible sounds beyond the rubbing fabric of her own clothing. Velia moved up a flight of zigzagging stairs to the second story, where a skylight cast a single column of light in the center of the hallway. All the doors were closed, but Roger's was identifiable from a series of stickers and the sign, "Keep out, violators will be tortured." When she reached his door, she took a slow breath to steady herself. One by one, she wrapped each finger around the doorknob until it was firmly in her hand. She'd mastered this trick when entering her house after dark to avoid her mother's detection. Velia torqued the metal knob, but it wouldn't budge. She reversed direction and tried again to no avail. She was locked out. Her heartbeat surged, and she was short of breath, unsure of what to do. Was this a trap? She immediately dismissed the thought and refocused. Velia pulled the bobby pins from her hair and knelt before the lock. Picking it without making a sound would be a doubly difficult task. She slid the 2 pins into the keyhole and started fidgeting with the internal mechanism, when a loud pop furthered her frayed nerves. She froze in place, waiting for Roger to burst through the door, but nothing happened. Micron by micron, she withdrew the bobby pins from the knob and replaced them in her hair. She stood and repeated her systematic grip. The knob turned without resistance, allowing her to crack the door and peer inside. Heavy red curtains bathed the bedroom in a devilish hue. The lower half of a large body was sprawled across the bed, but the head was buried beneath overstuffed pillows. She gently applied pressure on the door, opening it enough to slip inside the room. She still couldn't confirm it was Roger in the bed. She pushed the door until it was barely touching the frame. Leaving it cracked would make her exit easier. Heavy, rhythmic wheezing emanated from the bed, offering much-needed confidence that its occupant was asleep. The glass of water Agent Rylos described sat on a nightstand on the other side of the room. As if she were walking on actual eggshells, she took each step with caution, testing the floor with a portion of her weight before fully committing to moving forward. It took a few minutes to circle the bed and arrive at the glass. From her new position, she confirmed it was Roger in the bed. His thick black hair was spilling out from between 2 of the grime-covered pillows. The smell of sweaty feet saturated the air. Velia retrieved the chemical wafer from her pocket. She held the object in front of her face for a moment, then held her breath as she placed it above the glass and let go. She hadn't considered the density of the disc. It plummeted to the bottom, making a loud clank before dissolving. Roger pulled the pillow off his head, blinking a few times before shrinking further into his bed. Velia? Visions of Agent Rylos' van peeling rubber without her flashed through her mind. Roger struggled to sit up, trapped like a wild animal in the intertwined folds of his blanket. What are you doing here? She had no reply. Roger freed himself and scooted to the far side of his bed. He was now standing between her and the door. His focus was totally on her, but he hadn't seen the act of poisoning that had woken him up. Maybe she could talk her way out of this. Did you decide to do the honorable thing? Come pay your debt? Roger made the same air scissors motion with one hand while clearing his crusty eyes with the other. You cheated! Velia's emotions got the best of her. The hell I did! Roger boomed. Any potential for a stealthy resolution was gone now, Velia thought. I beat your ass, fair and square. Everyone in the arcade saw it, just like they saw you run off like the scared little loser you are. Velia moved around the bed, muttering, Fuck you, Roger. Oh, no you don't. Roger blocked the door with his body. Let me out now. Not until I get my prize. Roger sniffed the air. That's never going to happen. Velia tried to push past him, but he continued to obstruct her path while laughing like a hyena. Velia slammed her open palms into his chest again, but this time he responded with a closed fist to her face, knocking her out cold. When she came to, she was on Roger's bed, arms pinned to her sides by his knees. She could taste the sharp metallic bite of blood in her mouth. Roger sat on her chest with a pair of scissors, slowly cutting off locks of her hair and systematically placing them on the comforter beside her head. Velia struggled under his weight, but it only provided more fodder for Roger's diabolic laughter. Velia tried to scream, but Roger placed a hand over her mouth and nose. Shh. He held the scissors up to his mouth in place of a finger. Not that it matters. My parents are gone. We have the house to ourselves. Velia's frustration morphed into feelings of helplessness. She'd never felt smaller. Roger continued cutting her hair, occasionally tickling her face with the long brown tresses. Tears were coming quickly now, but Roger's weight made it hard to cry. She couldn't fill her lungs with the necessary air. The humiliation continued until Roger had harvested all of her hair. Then he climbed off her and moved to his nightstand. He set the scissors down and drank from the tainted water while watching Velia. She stared into the dresser mirror, barely able to recognize herself. Uneven patches of hair spotted her scalp, and the blood from her nose had dried around her mouth and down her neck. Roger sauntered around the bed, past Velia, and opened the door. Next time, don't make a bet you're unwilling to honor. She turned to face him with an ocean of tears in her eyes. Her lower lip was shaking from the suppressed rage coursing through her veins. Roger mockingly made a similar face, and she snapped, sending a front kick directly to his groin. He collapsed forward, growling from the pain. Driven by adrenaline, Roger wrapped his arms around her in an attempt to squeeze her into submission. The pair struggled for a moment before falling to the floor. Roger was on top of her again, but his focus was split by the pain radiating to the rest of his body, which allowed Velia to free her right arm. Recalling Kevin's advice, she plunged her thumb into the tear duct between Roger's nose and his left eye, and pushed with all her might. The sucking sound of the eyeball popping loose from the socket mixed with Roger's wails of hysteria. He fell to his side, rolling erratically while holding his face. Velia repeatedly kicked him in the head, then sprinted through the hallway, down the stairs, across the great room, and out the front door. She didn't check to see if anyone in the neighborhood was watching. She just ran as fast as she could down the street. The cold air felt like it might crack her lungs as she sucked in huge breaths, scanning the field for Agent Rylos's van. It was gone. She went to grab her hair, but the soft poke of the stubble surprised her, and she pulled her hand away. "Where the hell are you?" Nothing happened. Velia paced around the field, but Agent Rylos was nowhere to be found. In desperation, she collapsed to her knees, eyes overflowing again. She'd failed this test, and that's why he'd left her behind, Velia thought. She didn't want to return to her old life. Has it been too transformative? She finally felt what it means to be powerful. As if triggered by her thoughts, a gentle swishing sound spread across the field, and a portal materialized. It was hovering in the open air, 10 feet above the ground. Agent Rylos appeared like an inverted mirage as he emerged from his cloaked spacecraft, with more of him coming into view as he descended a set of stairs. He moved confidently across the field, looming over her for a moment before extending his right hand. "Welcome to the Black Star Hunters, Velia Wolf."